Hi, my name is Sabu Francis, and in this video, I'll be talking about some interesting aspects about how architecture used to be represented thousands of years back, and how we architects kind of distorted and made our representation of our designs a lot more complex than what is needed. And I'm offering to the architecture community all over the world uh, a slightly different way of looking at our designs, which according to me, uh, I'll try to prove to you that it is actually a lot more simpler, and there is some really good evidence. I was quite happy to see some things on the internet and which caught my attention, so I thought I should make this video and point this out to you. So let's take this clay tablet which archaeologists discovered. It's supposed to be about 5,000 years old, and it represents a Sumerian house plan. Now, those of you who are architects who are listening to this video, you can readily see this. In fact, non-architects also could probably take a look at it and understand it pretty well. What is interesting is the way they have gone about talking about the various rooms which they have. And if you see, each room has been identified. This the names of that particular room is given there, and you can see these marks here which actually represents the doorways into this various rooms. So you can actually see them, script, kind of carving out that part of the clay. The way these clay tablets used to be made was using a kind of a cone shaped cuneiform. That's why they are called cuneiform. Wedge shaped tool they had, sharp tool, and on wet clay they will actually do all the required markings. And when that clay dries up, you get the impression stays over there, and that's what you can see here. So if you see here, each of these rooms have been separately identified, and the doorways have been identified, and they have put one kind of a square around the whole thing. Some part of it is broken here. By the way, this is actually not part of the drawing. It is actually part of that crack of that. I mean, the clay tablets probably is in multiple pieces, and somebody has put them together. So if you can very easily see that this particular line here is actually one continuous line which represents the complete volume of that particular house or whatever this dwelling is. Then each of this room is a complete rectangle by itself. Now here, if you can see that that particular line has not got erased, but you can make out that there is actually a doorway over there, and they have actually taken out they have carved out those lines here. And if you see, there are some extensions of that line here. So it's actually kind of they've identified that doorway, the door opening, to be a separate entity, something to be spoken about and discussed. They must have people may have discussed this floor plan, and they figured out, this doorway is quite close to this doorway, and there must be some good reasons for it. And I can guess one reason. If this doorway was here, this much area would have probably got wasted, so they've pushed the door here. And also, it's quite nice to open a doorway in somewhere in the middle of a large rectangle, so the internal usage of the space inside this rectangular room is also quite efficient. So if you look at this, what happens is, it's a very simple way of talking about your design. And some people may argue that it is crude, it is raw, it is not what we architects do. Yeah, we architects unfortunately went about, according to me, distorting the elegance and the need to understand different elements in our architecture, and then we actually confused for ourselves and created a lot more problems, according to me. So if you now go here and take a look at how a computer aided drafting software, in fact even BIM software, would probably do. And this is from another image I got from Google. I think this is from Mesopotamia, and in the background you can see that clay tablet there, and somebody has carefully, nicely worked out a CAD drawing on top of it. Now, if you look at this, a CAD drawing actually is putting mark on the edges of built matter. So just bear with me here and just trace this particular mouse which I'm moving around on this. So if you take this line is actually quite continuous, and it represents this wall also, but it also represents this room also, and then it goes around here, and then it happily turns here, but here it is actually representing this doorway. It is not really representing this room anymore, and then it comes quite quietly into the other room. If you notice, this particular line is unbroken, and then again it turns around, again it's into a doorway, and then turns back and then goes there, and now it's in another room. It's not a philosophical point which I'm making. Even mathematically, this is a continuous line. That's the way it is defined. It just happens to have certain right angle corners in it, but you don't have to lift your pen and bring it back again, and lift your pen and bring it back again. Now this is the way we've been taught how we should make our floor plans, and we think that, isn't that what we have to do? Like, we have to just make those walls over there, and why do you have to think about what rooms and all that? I mean, the rooms emerge because the walls are made and not made. Like in this area you will not make a wall, so that becomes a doorway. Now this looks so logical, right? But the thing is that is not the way which we as humans really need. We need to know, what is this room, what is this room, what is connecting these two rooms, what is this room here, and what is connecting here. And I'm not the only guy talking about this kind of arrangement of spaces. There have been other architects who have been speaking about this. If you look up Rob Crayer's work, he would talk about these three elements. So there are actually three different elements which go together, and they kind of go one inside the other, so to speak. Like if you see the outer wall which is there, it is not this wall as the thickness of the wall over there. It's not the thickness of the wall, but it's that outer silhouette of the wall which we see, right? When we look at a building, we see the outer silhouette. Do you really see the thickness of the wall? I mean, unless you see a window over there, and you can guess probably it is that thick. But it really, the thing which captures your attention is your entire envelope, as if there is, the whole thing is full of something over there, and in the distance it will be actually a silhouette. So that is called, I call that particular type of volume as the outer envelope. The envelope, and inside the envelope there are these I call as atoms, because we don't further subdivide it. And these doorways, and if there are windows over there, they're all called connectors. Now this, I'm simplifying this because I don't want to stretch this point too much. And this is the way I would propose that we should need to look at architectures, and it's nothing much different, really speaking. As you can see, this also does result in a reasonably understandable floor plan, and later on you will see that same thing can happen in sections, and you will be able to get floor plans in sections on a similar fashion. What that does is that it actually inverts the drafting process. In the drafting process, we have been asked to look at where the edges of solid matter is, but the solid matter may be bounding one space in one point and another space somewhere at some other point in time, just the way I showed you. What architecture needs is actually talk about both the built matter as well as the space. So we have what is known now, a little bit of epistemology, is called a figure ground problem, right? If you look at a piece of text, say you're reading poetry, the alphabets which go into printing out the poetry is not really indistinguishable from the backdrop, right? The paper behind is not really of interest to you. You can completely ignore it, and then you can concentrate your eye and your brain on the alphabets, and then you can read that poem. And many such representations of various subjects in this world, whether it is literature or whether it is mathematics, you will see that the symbols stand out separately and the backdrop falls into the backdrop. There is no confusion between these two. But in architecture, there are times when we need to concentrate on the built matter, and sometimes you have to concentrate on the space. In fact, a lot of times we have to concentrate on the space for a very simple reason, because most of our work and our life happens inside space. I mean, we are not clambering up walls like Spider-Man, or we are not like termites going into the wall and doing things inside the wall, right? If we are designing for termites, maybe we may need to know what is happening in the wall. But by and large, what we do as humans is that we actually handle spaces. The space itself is a very tangible thing for us. So let me describe how TAD goes about doing it, and I'll give you a brief idea. But before that, let me show you this particular glass as an example. I mean, because in case somebody thinks that this is applicable only at building level, it is not applicable anywhere else. No, it is applicable everywhere. In this particular glass, we look at this glass in 3 different ways. I mean, in this particular glass, there is only 2 ways, but some other glass you could have 3 ways. Okay, so in a cup, you could have one more hole over there, which is for holding your handle over there. Now, in this particular case, what we do is that we have one recognition of this glass from outside, the outer envelope of it, but we have a different set of things about what is happening in the glass, which is the atom, to use my classification in TAD. So this particular glass inside has got its own space over there, and in between the outer envelope and the inside envelope is this material of this particular glass, and that by itself has got its own set of issues, whether it will get dented, whether it will get scratched, or whether the glass is clean, and things like that, right? So there are I mean, that those points don't occur here. Whether the water which goes into it later on is that clean, that is a different matter. But here the material itself has got its own properties, right? So everything which we design actually can be seen as a collection of these kind of 3 different types of spaces, be it a glass, be it a table, be it a apartment, be it the building in which the apartment is, be it you can go on and on and on, and you probably can go further down inside this. So anything which is built by humans can be actually put together as a collection of these kind of spaces. And once you do that, you find that, if you start using TAD, you'll find that actually it is extremely efficient in whatever it does. You can represent a complete building in kilobytes, and it's really fast because of that. So let me now give you the inside story of how it goes about doing it. So TAD is technically a fractal system, because as I just showed you, at every scale of examination you will see these 3 sets of atoms, envelopes and connectors, and I'll just explain to you how that works. Now keep in your mind something like a jelly, which is kind of a wobbly thing which occupies volume and space. So the outer envelope of a room is what I've shown here in yellow here, and this is the kind of a simple discovery of how you actually discover the built matter. So the built matter is equal to envelope minus atoms plus connectors. So you'll see how that happens. So let's place an atom inside this. Sorry, I went to the wrong place. So let's place an atom inside this. Just like in that Sumerian tablet, they were actually marking out that space, that room, and that room is marked out completely, and then later on they've gone and erased or put 2 lines over there to represent the connector. So here is the atom, atom is the space which is not further divided. In case of the glass, we do not further subdivide the volume of space inside it. So the atom here is only this much inside this. Okay, now let's go and add a connector like the way the Sumerians did. So you added the connector over here, and voila, you got the built matter, just like this formula. So the built matter is equal to the outer envelope minus the collection of atoms plus connectors. So you add all these things together. It's called a Boolean operation. Some of you who have played around with 3D software, you know what a Boolean operation is. Basically adding together or subtracting things. It's pretty much like arithmetic, excepting that you do it with actual full volumes. So how does this become fractal? So now what happens is, let me assume that there is one table inside this room. Now the table was not in the room earlier, but now it has come into the room. So the table actually is considered as an artifact, and it does not detract from the fact that this is a atom. It does not suddenly like you have to remove this particular space also. No, because you can always remove that particular table and you recover that space. And this is another very interesting thing about architecture, right? Architecture is a set of opportunities which the architect decides to promote, and a set of opportunities he wants to demote. Like if I put something in front of me, I cannot see beyond this, right? I cannot see beyond this glass because it's my eyesight is obstructed by this. But the moment I shift this, what was solid here has now become space. It gets occupied by space. Curiously, space is one volume into which you cannot further dig another hole into it, and that makes it pretty efficient, because when you talk about all this in a building, I don't have to really talk about a real hole in that building, because that hole itself is the space itself cannot be further dug hole into, right? And that makes it very interesting. So let's say that there's an artifact here, that's a table. So initially let's assume that that's just one big chunk of wood or something like that. But what TAD allows you is that you can further expand on that artifact which is a table, and at that level you will find that itself has got atoms, envelopes and connectors. And then you see there's a drawer inside. I have not shown it here, but there's a drawer inside this, and then when you open the drawer, that drawer itself has got atoms, envelopes and connectors. And inside the drawer there's a box, and that itself has got atoms, envelopes and connectors. So it is all atoms and envelopes and connectors all the way down. And if you orient your mind like that, it is actually pretty easy to start talking about design of a building, and that's what TAD really does. So I just thought that I should give you this overview. There's an interesting quote from Tao Te Ching, and it goes something like this: 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. You must have seen a bullock cart wheel. There are 30 spokes of that wheel. It's the center hole which makes a difference, right? The center hole which holds that wheel together. It's a hole which makes sense, which makes that wheel the wheel. If that hole was not there, you cannot use that wheel. Okay, shape clay into a vessel. It's a hole inside which makes sense over there, right? I'm misquoting this Tao Te Ching. I should have actually shown a slide on that. Cut doors and windows for a room. It's the space that makes a difference. It makes sense to you, right? So the last two lines are very interesting. So profit comes from what is there, but usefulness comes from what is not there. And if you have to be sensitive about how we go about using our designs, we need to actually model that, right? And we need to take a hard look at it and ascribe properties to it and analyze it and check it before it gets made over there. And that's what TAD does. So I hope all of you would join me on this magnificent project, and I hope we can really contribute to the world of architecture. Thank you so much.